Hey, glad you can make it. Welcome to Fantasy Dad Pods, where dad bods are glorified and dad jokes are encouraged. I'm JT, accompanied by Sean. Sean, how we doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Locally for us, it was getting sweatshirt off weather this couple days. Not in the morning. Walk the dog. It's pretty cold in the morning. But the afternoon walk, I wore a sweatshirt and I regretted it about halfway. I was like, oh, maybe it's and of course it's gonna rain here, so it's gonna get cold right away. But it's teasing us that it's t-shirt weather, which what t-shirt weather brings, JT, which is important to this podcast.
Sun's out, guns out.
Yes, and I was trying to lead you to say baseball, and I was going to make correct, but also lawn care. That's what we do here. So, it's getting. I'm judging people's lawns. I'm like, okay, this guy's green. I'm greener than this guy. Like we're already okay. So, I already got my Costco fertilizer getting ready to go. So
Nice.
we're eyeing it up this weekend. We're getting our oldest ready for this kind of kid marathon thing I think I've talked about. Or get some miles in, and then on like the last day they run like a mile with the parents, and we did a walk on Friday down to a local little grocery store, the Yokes, where we used to both work at back in the day, and then had dinner at the pizza place down there, and walked down there. He did a pretty good job. He got pretty tired on the way back, but he had his boba tea, and so he was doing okay. I think he got cold. I think he got cold and tired.
Yeah.
But then on Saturday, we just the boys went down to the gas station, got candy bars. So he's getting his miles in. We're doing a little bit of running, a little bit of walking, but it is almost 3 miles. So that's a good walk. Get those legs exercised. On top of
Yeah.
that, doing the martial arts still. He's been we wore him out pretty good this weekend. We wore him out
Nice.
pretty good. So what about you? You baseball? We're transitioning to baseball for you.
Yeah. So breaking news, my oldest is has been drafted into AAA. Um,
Okay.
so I stand
Okay.
corrected. I did not see that coming off of his tryout. Um,
Is he pumped?
so he's pumped. He's super pumped. Um, And I said, okay, cool. Well, guess what? Now the work begins. And he's
Yeah.
like, what? I'm just like, dude, like, Triple A's playing time. You're guaranteed 2 innings. You want 4 innings? You want five? Like, you got to earn it. You got to show up for practice and you're focused and you got to act like, I mean, it's just a different mentality. So, um, we talked about it a little bit. I didn't want to like kind of put a dampener on it, but I kind of wanted to send the messages like, hey, that's not the goal. Like that's a that's steps towards So and that's just not something I had growing up. That was like so I kind of wanted to talk about that with him because shoot, when I made the major league team at 10, I was just like, boom goes the dynamite, and it was like, oh, we gotta play like games and all that other like
Yeah, it was called Major A and B, right? Is that what it was called when we were growing up?
um I thought A and B was like the year before that, like
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
minors A,
yeah, yeah.
minors
You're right.
B,
You're
but
right.
then there's majors.
I thought that was
So
like the biggest jump too. Was like to
yeah,
that, and so he better be ready for that. That's like boom, like that's like I feel like a big jump. So
yeah. I'm still kind of like, how did that happen? I don't know. Anyway, don't know the code. Like it, like I'm
they're
like,
gonna develop him, JT. They're
I
gonna have
know.
fliners.
But I'm just like, I don't know the coach. Like
Yeah.
there was no backdoor deal. There was like no. I'm just like, really? Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Like here we go.
Yep.
Because part of me was like, well, double A would be good because he'll get a good amount of playing time, develop,
Yeah.
and now I'm just like, well, I don't know. I'd be kind of bummed if he only gets two
2 innings.
innings and he got drafted near the end of this thing. I don't know. It all see how it all pans out, but
Well, now it's time to put the
um,
work in. Then get more than two
yeah.
innings.
So I'll use the excitement as a fuel to keep it going. But yeah, so yeah, that was cool. We just found that out tonight. Yeah, my okay. So historically, here we go. This is niche fantasy dad pod vent sesh. You ready? Um, so my wife's helping out because she's going to transition from. So she signed up for to be on the board for the Little League. She's running the concession stand, And then going into next year, she's going to be the player like coordinator for majors and AAA, AA, all the ones that they try
Yeah.
out ages. So she's like learning it this year. So last night, tonight, and tomorrow night, she has 3 drafts in a row. Go from 5 o'clock to about, well, for her it was 11 p.m. last night.
No.
The draft ends by 8, but then she's got a whole another 3 hours of like setting up every single kid in their database. So she's there 3 nights in a row for about probably going to be about at least 6 hours. It was definitely 6 hours yesterday, 6 hours tonight, and then should be only a couple hours tomorrow, but 3 drafts in a row. And she's always given me flack over the years of, oh, he's in 3 fantasy leagues. And my response was always that of because I have a draft. The other ones are just like,
Yeah.
just random,
Best balls, slow draft.
don't take up time,
Yeah.
So yeah, so now we're even.
There we go.
Yeah.
So you're just giving her crap. You're like, about time you get back from your draft. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So yeah, but otherwise, I mean, it was a good long weekend. We had the holiday, school off on Friday. But yeah, we went on a bike ride. Enjoyed the weather. I mowed the front lawn. It was pretty long, and I need to thatch it next. So getting that ready. I think I'll probably reseed. Well, not reseed, but like throw some seed down. Seed down in the backyard. It's kind of sparse. The dogs.
Okay.
That's how we get their exercise in. The youngest dog is a tennis ball hound, and the middle dog, she loves that big like horse ball. You ever seen one of those with the bit on it?
Mm-hmm.
So she's doing like Rocky training all winter. So all the grass is just like, I don't even need to mow it. It's so trampled down. I feel bad. I'm like, I need to like get some more grass growing. So I need to. But yeah, that's on my mind, not the weather. So now it's daylight savings time. I'm just like, let's get to it. I need the irrigation on. Tis the season. Here we go.
Dang. Well, tis the season. Tis the season of yet more injuries for baseball. After we last talked last week, Garrett Cole. Did we jinx him, JT?
Nope.
It wasn't us. It was somebody else.
No, not at all. No.
Somebody else. We talked about how healthy he is. We got it. He's going to TJ, getting the old TJ. So, scratch everything we said about him. Also, tendon injuries in Stan's both elbows. We talk about it, if all things are to go for the Yankees, it looks like a good team. But like, Gill's not throwing for 6 weeks. Lemieux, DJ tweaked his left calf again. I just like, we haven't even started and it's already falling apart for the Yankees. So
that's a common theme over the last while now, really.
Yeah. George Kirby, Mariners, right shoulder inflammation, will start on the IL. Doesn't sound like it's too serious. It sounds like it's a precautionary thing. They don't want him to be out for too long, but he will miss the first 2 weeks of the season. Probably 2 starts, maybe.
That one hurts on multiple levels. Like Mariners fan, it hurts, and then just in terms of top fantasy arm, it hurts. And like I thought he had a lot of room to still grow, even though he's definitely top 10 starting pitcher.
Least, like with the first couple weeks, pitchers can. It's nice because you can avoid a couple like they would be starts because there's always like a couple weird off days, which I don't know if I saw that this year, but I'm just so sick of like opening day and then a half of teams having like the next day off. Like have an opening day, and let's go. Like it hasn't affected us honestly as Mariner fans, but I know it's affected other teams where I'm like, because usually like the second like true day or whatever it is, or like however that works. But I know there's some teams like I remember a couple years ago up in the Braves, like opening day, all the things, blah blah blah. They didn't travel; they just didn't play the next day. And then just like, okay, we're now at full. I'm like, why are we doing that? Like, what? Like, so there's a lot of like weird off days early. So like, a lot of these pitchers, if they're gonna miss a couple weeks or a week from the start, it's not the worst thing because it might be 1, maybe 2 starts missed.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, that's not fantasy related, but Major League Baseball opening day is historically a Thursday. What I don't is it just to not compete with March Madness? Like I don't
I
because a
don't
lot of
know.
a lot of teams it's like everybody plays Thursday and then half of us play Friday and then finish the weekend. So it's like some have a 3 game or 4 game.
Is it
I
that
mean
way
I
this
read
year?
a
I was looking, and I think most teams play opening day this year.
yeah I think it's most it's a Thursday so I would think Friday would be sparse.
Yeah.
Um,
But at least I mean, I just want them to get it together and play on the same day. But just for my own sanity, and like whatever day you're gonna start. But let's just go. You know. But yeah, it's fresh. It's always been frustrating for me in that regard. Let me see here. No game scheduled. It looks like full load on Thursday.
I was gonna say it's either all or just might be 2 missing. I was just
Yeah, I was gonna
counting. I
say it
either got
looks
14
pretty
or
full.
15 matchups.
Yeah, on the next day. So what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games.
Okay. There's still so many like those random off days in the first like few weeks. I think just I know there's a handful of teams that have talked about they really won't even need their SP 4 or 5
Yeah,
until week 3. Like if they want to just keep regular rest for their first, and it's just kind of
yeah. No, we're
I
doing
know
even
it's
again. They only have 9 games on that Friday. I mean, that's what 18 teams. It's half the league. Come on, baseball. But fantasy wise, it is relevant of like that, like you just said, like with all these weird days off, and then they make it a Monday off or the Tuesday off, something like that. It, the starting pitchers being nicked up early, if it's not long term, it's only 2 starts maybe if they're gonna miss the short IL. So that's at least something. We talked about it. Hey, Grayson Rodriguez could be really good, but if he plays, intercostal strain. So very hopeful opening day. I'm doubting opening day, but again, the weird schedule might just be pushed back a day or two more than that's it. Like so, we'll see. Any anything else, JT, that you saw? It kind of like Garrett Cole sucked up all the
yeah, a lot of what we talked about, just all the oblique injuries we
Kendall
mentioned
maybe
last
coming back. Yeah.
pod.
Okay.
Um, I thought there might have been one more, but I'm not remembering off the top of
I
my
know
head.
that. I don't know if you saw Chris Paddock took a ball off the head. Expect to be
Oh,
okay, but yeah, that was a little
okay.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anything else, but those were some Kirby, Cole, and Grayson Rodriguez were all 3 big oof right after record starting pitcher. Like it was like the three. It was the position we of course save and talk about, and 3 big name starting pitchers get a little nicked up right after we talk about it, but uh, it's how it goes. It's how it goes.
Yeah. All right. So, what do we got in store? We got
I
some
I want to
relief pitching.
discuss some RP. Um, Now I've been on the a proponent in the past of very against drafting RPs super high. This has been back for a while. Just it wasn't worth it in there. But as most people listening to this podcast know, starting pitchers innings have gone down and relief pitchers innings have gone up. And it's not that pitchers innings have gone up. Some of these dudes be throwing some real efficient innings, like real
Mm-hmm.
efficient innings. So it's come time to reevaluate. And you were always a proponent of. I felt like you drafted guys pretty high, not like you weren't like third round draft from RP, but like for me, where I was comfortable, you were always like ahead of the curve, more of like, oh, let's rip this, let's do this thing. Um, I'm now on board. I am like, hey, like even round 5. I mean, the value that a healthy Devin Williams is going to get you in a Class A if he puts up anything close to last year, it's immense. Especially, obviously, saves leagues. Depending on holds or whatever leagues they've devalued. But if you have a saves league, plus they put up those ratios, and they're going to get almost 70 innings now, which is, I mean,
Right.
almost half a starting pitcher. In some of these cases, we're hoping Grayson Rodriguez gets to 150 innings. I mean, yeah, round 5 is not ridiculous. It's just not anymore with these elite guys. These guys that on good teams, they're going to get a ton of saves, and in theory, they should be giving you some nasty innings. I think there are 3 guys, JT. Correct me if I'm wrong, that you could do that with. Class A, Williams, and Hader. I liked what Hader's recovery at the end of last year. There's a lot of evidence. I can't remember the exact time frame, but I think it was like a 2-week or a 1-week, 10-day stint where he got hit. Balls went over the fence a lot, and then other than that, he was really efficient.
Right.
I think those 3 guys, if you take them, I mean, again, anything round 5 or below, I'm totally fine with it. I would not if you took them top around 5 because that's just how valuable they are anymore. At this day and age. Are you kind of like in the same ballpark? How early would you take a relief pitcher?
I'm in the same ballpark. I'd include Edwin Diaz
He just
in the
so we know the
combo.
bounce and all that stuff. But
Yes.
again, if he shows me first month, I'd be like, okay, I'll eat my words. He's in it. But
Right.
the bounce back. I need to. Yeah.
It's just like it's a situation. It's like, and it's him for saves. Period. It's the manager mentality. It's like it's a whole
Right.
perfect storm. It's just he needs to be what we know him to be. Like it's
It's literally an
really.
every other year thing. 2017,
Mhm.
3 ERA, 18, 1, 19, 5, 17, 1, or 21, 21, 3, 22, 1, 24, 3. Like, it's like every other year, he's a 1 ERA. And if you give a 1 ERA with the Mets, that's how many saves? 50,
Oh yeah.
55? Yeah.
And I mean, these guys are the 60 plus innings, 100 plus strikeouts, the great ratios, the 30, 40 saves. I mean, if you equate that to one pitcher, I mean, but you're getting probably upwards of 70 saves out of that too. You can't really equate that to wins or quality starts. I mean, that's what kind of like hangs in the balance if you're trying to manage it all. But otherwise, I mean, you could go super early, like our mutual friend Sam Wershing. He's in. So when we drafted in the Werf League this year, his first 2 pitchers he was on the turn and he just went back to back, and he did one of the 2 of the 4 that we're talking about. I forget who it was, and then I saw he was in some other slow draft, and he had the same strategy. So obviously he's implementing that, and that's a 15-team league for each one. And I feel like a 12-team league, you could get away with it even more. Like there's so much more to be had for starting pitching, and starting pitching is super deep. And if you're talking 12-team, then it's almost a no-brainer. Like you almost want to lock that up. I mean, you would really want the convenience, if you will, of having one of these top 4 guys, and then back that up with someone else just a couple picks later. And it might just kind of depend on where you are in the draft, but like I think it's a super advantageous thing to not chase, because there's a lot more committee and there's a lot more my best dude goes in the highest leverage situation, and so it just kind of misses out. And so there's a lot more question marks than there really has been ever before. It's been building to this. It keeps getting more murky each year, and it's at a kind of a tipping point. Is what I'm thinking that you're alluding to, and I'm
Yeah.
agreeing with.
I think eventually baseball will need to, fantasy wise, will need to switch to maybe like winning percentage added or something like that for a category instead of saves. Because the most
Okay.
valuable
Yeah.
innings are winning percentage. Like, I don't care if there's nobody out in the
Right.
ninth. I'm not saving, Edwin Diaz or Class A for that. There's 2 guys, there's second and third, 1 out in the 7th. I need those 2 guys out, and I'm up by 1.
Mm-hmm.
I can't bring in Class A if I'm down, or I could, but you know what I mean? Like, it's less effective if I'm down. I need to keep the lead now. Hope I get out of this. I need my best pitcher now. So I think there's been a push among some circles of just winning percentage added as the category. And so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's for relief pitchers. I'm like, that would be interesting. But like Like to your point, in the committees, there's 7, 8. You could maybe convince me 10 guys that are like, we're the dude. We are the guy who's gonna get the saves, and it's it. And they start going around 44. Again, we're using fantasy pros just in general. 44, between there and 60. And around that area is Yamamoto, King, that type of thing. I'm trying to think of Shota Imanaga. Trying to see who else here is going. Aaron Nola. So my thought is like, but your reference of like going back to back on the turn. If you go in here and go 2 relief pitchers, are they going to be worth the same for you as like an Imanaga? Like, is that like that's my thought, and I go, yeah, I could probably justify that because my the opportunity if I get the 2 elite closers, I get here, I get a I don't know, I get a Williams and a Edwin Diaz on the turn here. What is it harder to find those 2 than to replace I don't know, the next guy I'm looking at here, starting pitcher Jacob DeGrom or an Aaron Nola? I think I could find, 3 rounds later. Let me scroll down here. We could talk. We talked about how we love all these Spencer Swellenbach. Just like there's a lot of
But
guys
yeah,
just a couple rounds later, a very solid Luis Castillo. We talked about how he's just the same as an Aaron Nola. Just they're both like quality innings eaters, but they're kind of going on the down. But if I get those 2 relief pitchers and pass an Aaron Nola, 2 rounds later, I could just get a Luis Castillo. And did I lose a ton there? Versus like, what relief pitcher am I getting down here past a Felix Bautista, who I hope is coming back? Like I like those elite guys still have so much value because they're still so elite. And which I still mind Felix Bautista, and I really love Duran too, who's actually down here. But that's you get the general point of it.
oh yeah,
So I think those elite guys, those 4 or so guys, you've convinced me with Edwin Diaz, but there's so much value to be had for them, and so I see them going. Now after that, it kind of comes a tier because even with the Mariners, with Munoz, who's really good, his usage wasn't always 9th inning. So or save opportunities. So I don't know if it's going to continue new manager for a full season or not, but like they're less like we're 9th inning guys only. Mason Miller probably 9th inning guys only, but again plays for the A's. There's a downside with the other 4. With after the 4, they're all good closers on good teams. After you get past that, it's like you might be a good closer on a good team because I think in general the Mariners are a pretty good team and they're going to win a lot of close games, but he's not going to be used in the 9th inning all the time. And they have a lot of other arms in the bullpen they feel comfortable with now. So it's really those 4 with a bullet. And then there's like another tier of like guys you're like, yep, talented. What's their usage and what's their wins? I think it goes all the way to like right here to Duran at number. Where does he fall? He's number 9. Yeah, I'd probably say that. So probably 5 to 9. I'm like, that's where I feel really safe. And then there's Felix Bautista, who has questions, health, and everything like that. Then after that, it's kind of like you can roll in this kiddie pool if you want. And someone should, near the ends of your draft, middle of the rounds, you should get in here like, hey, can a Tanner Scott, like things like that, like Suarez, Jeff Hoffman, like what does this look like? But it's you might understand you're dipping in a kiddie pool of a committee or an 8th inning thing or whatever you're gonna get because the other guys, the 5 through 9, those are the most talented guys in the pen, no questions asked. And if
mm-hmm.
it comes down to it, they're gonna be the 9th inning guy. If there's like any question, other than that, it's like, could you see somebody stealing 50% of 40% of the saves? I'm like, yes, and now all these other situations due to various reasons, health, talent, usage. I could see it's being a 60-40 split with any of these teams down here. And I feel like they're nice, like, oh, I need a third closer. I don't have any saves. I punted saves. Let me get a couple of these guys to try to get a couple against teams who did punt saves. But that's your only reason for being down here.
Yeah. I mean, by that estimation, there's barely enough closers to have one fantasy team have this is the primary closer on their own real life team like
You
that.
said it. They're not a lot of them are pitching the 9th inning, and there's just not 12. There's not.
Right. So, I mean, I was trying to think of it two different ways, and each way I thought of it, I would come to the same conclusion. Whether or not, like, you're in a 12 team, and you're like, okay, I could stream starting pitching because the free agents available are going to be a lot better off because I'm in kind of a little bit of a smaller league. Okay, and it would benefit me to have elite closers, and then I could just focus on
Because no,
starting
it's
pitchers.
like when these guys gets hurt, the next guy's not going to be elite closer. Starting pitcher, you know, how many guys do we find it every year? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
Strolbach, we just talked about him. You know, it came out of nowhere. There's always these guys that you could find something on the heap. You know, there's always these guys or guys that are more serviceable. With relief pitchers that gets hurt, let's say Edwin Diaz gets hurt, you're like, I hope the backup gets a save this week, or is it a committee now? Like it might even just be a committee after that. It might be three guys that are fighting for saves after if D gets hurt. Like it's such a drop off at versus starting pitchers.
Right. Yeah, and then on top of that, you think about just like, okay, worst case scenario, whichever method you want to use, that person gets injured. Talking about a pitcher, whether it's you're taking an elite relief pitcher or elite starting pitcher, the elite relief pitcher gets injured, it becomes a committee of whatever it is right away. There's very few that would just step in and be the only sole, eater of innings in the ninth for save opportunities. Whereas you lose your elite starting pitcher, the next pitcher that comes up, or that it be some other free agent in your fantasy league, you could probably still spot start and piece together something decent enough where you can get a better percentage of what you're missing going starting pitching route and losing out on that. Where I feel like if you lose your relief pitcher, so I feel like you might as well invest in the relief pitcher, because if you lose it, then everyone's just kind of fight over little bits. Where if you lose the starting pitcher, like it's probably an easier recovery.
Yeah, like let's say the guy. Let's say if you draft already, Garrett Cole gets hurt. I don't know. I'm just gonna. Obviously, I'm gonna roll here. It's obviously gonna be a name that is probably roster, but I'm just gonna roll down here. I just the 50th overall. It's Robbie Ray. Let's just say for some reason you only have 49 starting pitchers in the whole league rostered. The next
Mm-hmm.
guy up is Robbie Ray, and you pick him up because you drop Garrett Cole. At some point, let's say Garrett Cole doesn't get hurt. Robbie Ray, in the course of a season, due to streaming other thing, was gonna get rostered at some point. He was a good enough player to play on a fantasy team this year. And all you're doing is, yeah, you're going to lose Garrett Cole. That sucks. But the guy you're picking up is a guy who is going to be rostered whether Garrett Cole got hurt or not. You cannot say that if Edwin Diaz gets hurt and the third guy in the bullpen's coming up. If Edwin Diaz never gets hurt, he's not getting picked. That guy's not getting picked up for the Mets or the second guy. It's always a race between two guys, and always one of the two guys just doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? Like, and they're not relevant unless somebody gets hurt. Versus if Garrett Cole gets hurt, Robbie Ray is going to be picked up regardless, yes or no. Streaming, another guy gets hurt, another call up, he starts playing well. It was going to happen. So I feel like you just said, like the downside, yeah, it's going to suck either losing a starting pitcher or a starting relief pitcher, but you can make up the starting pitcher losing him easier than you can. There's just no way to ever do it. And I've never
Right.
seen a guy come out of nowhere and get you like 40 saves, 38 saves. Like I don't know the last time it happened.
Right. And then on top of that, like, say you're like, well, I want to steer against the skid and I want to be picking up all these elite, quote unquote, starting pitchers that you're going to miss out on because you're taking all these other, you know, elite relief pitchers. Well, you better be in a daily league, because you needing to still fulfill saves, it's going to take you more guys. It's going to take you three or more, probably, if in committee situations. So you better have the roster space to do it, and you better be in a daily league, because if you're in a weekly, you're kind of setting yourself up behind the eight ball, or just hoping you get really lucky, and as we call it, Sean Kelly it, and just thread the needle, shoot the moon, and it could happen, but it's just the percentages of
Yeah,
that happening are a
I
lot
used
lower.
we're on another podcast sometimes with my brother, and I feel like analytically speaking, someone was like, like I'm like, oh, you always take a quarterback in the first round in a real draft. Or not always, but like you always want first round talented quarterback. And someone's like, well, teams have won with second round quarterbacks, things like that, or blah 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 blah. I go, yeah, but historically, like top 10 quarterbacks usually do the best. or do X, Y, and Z, win Super Bowls. Like, well, you can. I go, well, you can, but why are the most likely? If anything else happens and you get lucky, but don't bank on the luck. Like,
Right.
yeah, I agree. Denounced my lower RP and don't draft catchers in the top 100. It's like it's toasted. Both rules shattered. Like, we're done.
We're halfway into this decade. Like it's a whole new era.
It's a whole new era.
Like
Like, catchers are like, we just hit bombs too, and everyone's like, that's all we're doing, because it was largely like they couldn't hit for any average, and when some players were hitting for higher average and it was more of a this, and it's like, hey, we're just hitting home runs now, and catchers like, I can hit home runs. Like, oh, you're doing what everyone else is doing. Okay, it's a more level playing field now. Granted, there's only still like 3, but 3 more than it was. But yeah, I like where current baseball is, the hodgepodge it is. A lot of people complain of. I don't know what your thoughts are of the whole home. There's too many home runs. All the players are kind of like cyclical. They're all kind of doing the same thing. I think very different. We talked about in the outfielder uh, thing of like how there's guys we thought about Kyle Schwarber, who's hitting 40 bombs, stealing no bases. Or there's guys near at the bottom where they're stealing like 38 bases, or second basemen are stealing 40 bases, but hitting 2 home runs. I feel like it's more of it's come down to an average thing. And if you're in an average league, that's one thing. But I think OBP leagues, it is just as like varieties as it's ever been. Because there's still so like there's no small ball. I'm like, there's so many. We talked about it in the second base ranking. There's all like half the list was small ball after like the first 8. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the outfielders, there's
right.
plenty of guys who hit like no home runs and steal tons of bases, especially with the stolen bases rules now. So I think that like the way it goes now, mostly obviously you're not going to be able to find the power high up in this draft. So the power is going to get elevated. But my thought here is like I see Michael Harris here at 46. His biggest attribute I feel like is his speed. I'm dropping him because that is this. I don't think you agree, but I think that is the attribute that can be found much later in the draft. So I am going, if you're telling me I gotta get the power, Teoscar Hernandez is right here. I'm drafting Teoscar Hernandez way higher than Michael Harris because I can find Michael Harris' skill set somewhere else much later.
Yeah, and really, I think if you want steals, like wait and just wait on middle infield type of players. Like there's a ton to be had. Get your power, out of the way early and keep, banking it. There's a lot of stolen bases to be had, and the ADP is a lot lower. And usually, yeah, there's those second base, shortstop eligible types of players.
So I see Corbin Carroll here is at 11. Do you hold that against Corbin Carroll a little bit? I mean, he doesn't hit as many home runs as we would say. Like, I mean, he's surrounded by Vlad, Jordan, Julio. Like, do you hold that against him a little bit? Do you think he's going to bounce back and have like the 30 home runs he's going to need to be up here at 11? Or should he be closer in the 20s or something like that?
I guess it's depending on, yeah, the tale of two halves for Corbin Carroll, right? Which one do you believe in? Because neither one's going to translate into 2025. Like that was each year's its own sample, and we got a whole brand new sample.
Well,
But
straight year, he was only 25 home runs. So, like, he can't crack that 30. I mean, he's going to steal like 50 bases in a good season. But if he can't crack that 30, I mean, obviously it's the combo of the two, but like again, we're talking Julio Rodriguez who goes 30-30 every year, who's down a little bit lower, or Jordan's hitting 40, or Mookie Betts is doing this. Gunnar Henderson's going up crazy up here. He's in elite territory, and even if you're stealing 50 bases, you're not cracking that 30 home run mark. Is that and again, nitpicking here. We're talking 11 to 18.
yeah,
Baseball. But like, is it a conversation? Is it something like, hey, if you're not going to hit those home runs, and we just talked about how home runs are a super valuable thing, should you be up there at number 11, number 10 with guys who are going to, everyone around you is going to hit 30. You're not, unless he does it. Unless you think he's going to do it. But,
right. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought because, like, would you rather who's more valuable if runs and ribbies were like everything else is the same, but except we're talking about just home runs and stolen bases. Who's more valuable, a 20-40 guy or a 40-20?
I say 40-20 because I could find, it's harder to get those 40 and I could find the 40 later.
Okay.
And the second bases later. I mean, it's Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think that's where I lean because it's just what how many people hit 40 home runs last year versus how many people stole 35 bases last year. I think that's actually a genuine question. I don't know. I might be surprised if people flip
4
it.
versus 5. 4 guys hit 40 plus. But if we even we said 30,
Yeah.
so 22 guys hit 30 home runs
How many
last
stole
year,
30 bases?
and 17 stole 30 bases.
Okay.
So I think it's obviously the combo.
Yeah.
It's those guys are definitely more
Obviously.
valuable. I don't know. Like it's we're really splitting hairs at
Yeah.
this point, but I think I lean with agreeing you because over the course of a season, I mean, season's 25, 26 weeks, a little bit more if you're including technically like All-Star break, but they don't play. So in my
Yeah.
head, doesn't count. But um, it's just the division of what can I average per week. That's what
Yeah.
we're used to, a head-to-head kind of like weekly
Yeah.
type of league. That's how we started. And so it's just like, if it's 25 home runs, it's a home run a week. If it's 25 stolen bases, that's stolen base a week. But I feel like speed and stolen bases is more prevalent. It's out there, especially with the rule change, and
Yeah.
should be more to be had as people get even more used to it. Whereas it's like power's power, and if it travels and it plays and it's legit, and there's only so much of it, and if you're gonna strive for power, it's I think it's the thing to chase, because I
Yeah.
feel like stolen bases can fall to you, whereas the power is chicks dig the long ball,
Yeah.
fans dig the long ball. Like it's got its own little, I don't know, niche kind of pop culture
Yeah.
type of vibe to it as well. It
There's
might
nothing
be the
like it.
little cherry on top.
I got so this is how I view stats really quickly. So when I look at or stats when it comes to fantasy, because usually there's certain categories that are done, but I always go the two, and that's what I call them. I call them the counting stats, the home runs and the stolen bases. Those are the first two I look at. Like obviously not for projection purposes, but for what you did last year, I look at your stolen bases and your home runs because I feel like if you're stealing bases, this doesn't go for everybody, but if you're stealing bases, you're probably and we're talking about you fantasy wise, you're probably at the top of the lineup, probably. And with that, it leads to runs, and that's usually a category, and vice versa. If you're hitting home runs, you're usually hitting someone else in, not always Mike Trout. It leads to RBIs. So that's why, and those are kind of like four that are usually involved in fantasy. And then you get a little funky with average, on base, slugging, whatever, OPS, whatever other categories usually makes offense. I feel like those four are always there, and that's kind of whatever. So I always look at those two, and I call them the counting stats because that's why we talk about stolen bases, home runs all the time. They're linked to the other ones, and then so it bleeds into it. So if, I feel like the more that I look at this with Corbin Carroll, because I was comparing him to Julio Rodriguez. I said Julio Rodriguez has gone 33, 35, like before, and Corbin Carroll's never hit. He's at 25 one time. But to go with that, Corbin Carroll's in a much better situation, both RBIs and runs. So I think maybe the offset is Corbin Carroll's going to do less himself, but those around him will make up the difference between him and Julio. So I think maybe, yes, our theory was correct. Stolen bases, like he should probably drop, but the factor of other teammates and ballpark really lift Corbin Carroll above Julio Rodriguez. I think that's what the deciding factor has to be for me, looking at it now, because I was like, you're right. He got so hot at the end of the year, and gosh, he has so many runs, and still like he's pulling in 70 RBIs, and Julio, granted, off year and everything like that, is not even cracked in 70, and he didn't even crack 70-70. Even in his best year where he went 32-37, barely got 100 just because of the Mariners. So
Mhm.
in a down year, I feel like even Corbin Carroll's just teammates, not individual player, just lift him above. So I think we're correct in the maybe individual player wise, you flip them. Julio's more valuable probably, or maybe the better player, but situation does matter. So we learned something new live on this podcast.
It's it kind of ties into, gosh, it's probably been a few years, maybe it's 4 years ago. We stumbled on a stat called secondary average. Do you remember us talking
Yes.
about that?
Yes.
And I remember tweeting Tom Tango Tiger on Twitter at the time, and talking about, hey, we found this stat and blah blah blah, and picking his brain on it. And he's just like, oh, that old thing. I was like, well, yeah, indulge
Yeah.
me. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
just like, and so secondary average, for those who don't remember or know, it's walks plus net stolen bases. So stolen bases minus caught stealing, and then plus total bases minus hits. And so you kind of get that kind of counting like a slugging, but it's just like just what extra bases. It's kind of eliminating all the singles, if you will, and just
Yeah.
whatever extra bases got out of
It's rewarding like you walking and then stealing the base and essentially creating the double.
yeah, and hit them for a little more power. And then
Yeah.
so it's divided by at bats. So of course, I'm kind of nerdy, and I've created this spreadsheet for secondary average. I pulled the recent numbers for 2024 like 2 weeks ago, and I was just like, yeah, whatever. I just kind of just curious. I think I pull it once a year, and I
Yeah.
just see what happened last year. Because it's really like an individual effort. I just watched, shout out to Trevor May. Been watching more of his stuff
Yes.
recently, and he just recently, I think within the last couple months, I was kind of skipping around on what I was listening to, but he did a video on the difference between B War and F War. I thought it was really well did, and he kind of equated it to kickball. If someone's scouting kickball team, I don't know if you watched it,
I did
but
not, but I've delved into that myself, and yeah.
okay. And so he was just talking about like B War is about what you did, what the team did, and if you contributed to that, like you get credit, like group credit, you get the
Mhm.
A if you win. Whereas F War is projecting forward. It's very individualistic. It's only based on what you um, did and will do. And so this is very much that individual. You walk, you steal bases, and you hit yourself around the bases, and no one else is helping you. That's secondary average. And so there's only three guys over a 500 secondary average, which is just ridiculous in itself. But it's Judge, Soto, and Otani. But then you get into right, but you get into this, like you get the walks and you get some stolen base credit, but you also got to slug a little bit. And Kyle Schwarber, who's not a base stealer, he's a walker. He's fifth. He's
Hey.
behind Jordan at fourth, and it's Schwarber, and then it's Trout, Tucker, Max Muncy. Super low you pointed out super value on his ADP for third base corner, and Bryce Harper, Acuna Jr., Corbin Carroll. I mean, that's just kind of rounding this out. And I don't know,
Yeah,
just
not a lot of stolen bases up there though. Like,
not heavily.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jock Peterson rounds out the top 15. I mean, just
Telling
all
you,
power, tons of
sneaky
walks.
jock. Yeah.
And so it's just like, it really is interesting on how the individual, you take away the kind of that runs RBIs aspect, and you really individual contribution, and it's just like a nice kind of fun exercise to see, how much is it individual contribution versus how much is it like a WRC plus. It's going to be a whole lot better when you're on a really good team scoring a ton of runs, and that is kind of a weird part of also B War and F War, because one plays into one and not the other, and so I don't know. Like there's like actually the one of the extreme cases is actually right there, right below Jock. I think at 16, or I guess technically 15. Matt Wallner, outfielder, Minnesota. He's up here on the secondary average, but I did I didn't know what to call it, but so I called tertiary average. I know, super nerd.
You made it not even first, second, third average. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of I I baked in also some counting stats and accounting for like the team aspect of it, but still kind of weighted out. But and docking them for strikeouts, I was trying to add a couple extra layers. So I had, since I include strikeouts, I had to divide by plate appearances to keep it on the up and up. But his tertiary average was horrible. So it just like Minnesota historically is just like they're missing a lot of their stars to injury, and so it's just like when they're not around, like the club's really been kind of big hit or miss in terms of their success and in scoring runs, especially, and so it's just kind of reflected like Matt Wallner showed up and showed out individually, but like wasn't a whole lot of big help around him. So
that's interesting. I heard second average. I had this is my first. I think I've heard of tertiary average. So thanks for that. I had not heard of the third average.
No, I just made it up.
So. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm back to stone aces. Like power is it's all about the power. Um, okay, so is there any other just general draft or player ranking, or it can even be position ranking thoughts you have? I got a couple more, but I want to like you've already kind of shared one, but I was just like, is there anything else you want to touch on before I go on a tangent again?
No, I'll flow with you. You go ahead.
So we've been very starting pitcher heavy in the past between the two of us. It's always fun when we're in drafts together, and it's like I feel like we hurt each other. That's why for a while we've done well, I would say, but not super well because we have the same mindset. We're doing the same thing. And if one of us wasn't in the league, I feel like it would go so much better. You know what I mean? Like I would like high OBP or on and then heavy A starting pitchers, and I'm like, oh man, we would have just cleaned house. I would have got all these guys, and then it's just you doing the same thing.
Right.
Like it's funny to watch us in an auction league where we're both fighting over a couple years ago Bryce Harper, like those types of players. Like we're just fighting over Bryce Harper and like Garrett Coles, and it's just like everyone else is like, all right, we're done bidding, and it's just me and JT going after all these aces. And I'm just looking at our teams, and we have like 6 deep of like number ones on teams, or like true like top half of the league. And I remember looking at it and having one time where it was just me and you, and I think between the two of us it was 6 and 7, so it was like 13 of like the top like 20 guys was on our two teams. And so it was something ridiculous like that. Now, again, our hitting, we had like 2 hitters in the top, and everyone else went hitter heavy, but we were just so done at pitching heavy that it was just like great. But then it ended up hurting us because when we would play each other, it would be like my one advantage was gone. And we're just like, and I knew it, and it was just like a couple times we're like, crap. And then it suddenly became like a stalemate. And then I'd run into like someone who got a hot week, and then I didn't have the bats. So what I guess it boils down to is, and I need to get better at this, and I think a lot of other people do is, and I say it every year. It's the pivot during the fantasy draft. I am so like I like these guys X, Y, and Z, and I need to write it down or type it out or do something, and have like a plan, maybe A, B, and C. And it's not like draft X, Y, and Z in round A, B, and C. Maybe you can do that for round 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, have like some targets because no one really fluctuates too much. But after that, some people will do some crazy stuff. You always have a lead in round 5 where someone's like, here we go. And you're like, can't really start to pace in this. Or you have keepers and it kind of throws off all your standings and all that stuff. So beyond that, so I need to do a better job. And I think a lot of people need to do a better job of when I'm seeing like, okay, this guy is doing the same thing, or these couple people are going after these same targets, I got to understand like, hey, I'm on the turn. I'm, pick 11. I haven't picked for a while. Understanding that like there might be a run on pitchers, but I need to be okay with that. I need to basically it comes down to not entirely best player available, but I need to fluctuate to best player available better. I don't know if there's something you think you've noticed in your drafting, but I've noticed that in my drafting. I've noticed that like I'm like, I really want to load up early on starting pitching and then do this. And it's really hurt me in WRF, I think, the most in a couple of years because a lot of them feel the same way we do. And so it's when you get a league of people like that, it was a mess for me. I was just like, I did not anticipate this enough. It would make a ton of picks where I'm like, after like a round later, I'd be like, that was stupid. You know what I mean? Like that feeling where you just know is bad. And I would always feel like, man, I did not knock that draft out of the park. Like I just did not. And I felt that 1 year this year in football, I was just like, it was the draft and it was in my work league, and I was just like, as soon as it was over, I was like, that team sucks. Like it just felt like that. And because I
Yeah.
didn't pivot, I didn't adjust. I was like, what are we doing? Flying by the seat of my pants. And there's some people who can do it, but I was just like, there was no guide. So I don't know if you have like general advice, but that is what I need to work on. And I feel like a lot of people that in a lot of drafts, I've drafted a lot of people over the years. I feel like some are just winging it and it's fine, but other people are like, I have this style. I need to like a lot of what you see is fill up my starters first. And that drives me crazy. I don't do that anymore, but I know people who do that. And I go, you need to pivot away from that. If you're filling up your starters first, now this isn't a football league where like you don't need to draft a backup kicker or defense, but like there's people who like,
Right.
I don't have a shortstop, they get the next available shortstop. I go, look, you can look, but there's a tier that you've missed. Miss the tier. Don't overdraft the next guy. Let
Right.
it go. Like that's not my theory. That's what I see a lot of like people online that do that, or a lot of leagues you work in. Mine is I don't adjust. I'm like, I gotta load up on some more. It's usually pitchers. Like I gotta get some more pitchers. I don't have the depth, and I load up on the depth too much, and I neglect like I've never had a Manny Machado share, and I feel I've played enough where I should, and I've just missed him because I like the pitchers around him more, and I think that's an issue with me. Players like that I constantly miss. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
have any general advice.
Yeah. This year I tried to intentionally phase myself into the draft season with a certain kind of like, okay, in January, I want to just familiarize myself for where people ended up, where people signed, what kind of the projected depth charts are that Fangraphs is helping with. They track the free agents right there. You click on the one tab over, they track the depth charts. Really easy. You just kind of check in on it every few weeks. Also, so then by the end of January, I'm looking at some like just mock drafts, some best balls, some just kind of like I'm just screwing around, seeing what it is. I'll set up a 15 team on my Fantasy Pros Wizard baseball app, and I'll do 15. I'll just mock draft from the third or fourth, or from the seventh or eighth, or from like the 11th or 12th. So kind of near the beginning, near the middle, near the end. And I'll do it for a 12 team too if I'm feeling bored or
Yeah.
interested. And it really, in a snake draft, like you said, the first, I don't know, 60 or so players are pretty much the same 60. It's
Yeah.
just a little bit of a different order depending on what. And again, there's no pressure on the Fantasy Pros. I take my time. I read what's the stretch, what's available. By this point, how many of different positions are gone? Where's that tiered? Is there a couple guys left on it? Is a whole tier gone? Okay, mental note. And so I kind of do first third, middle third, last third in terms of a thought process for it. And that's just January. So and then February, it's nice to get my slow draft in. And this year it kind of flipped. We did Werf first. And so that was kind of like that, just on the clock, 1 minute to pick. But I felt pretty well prepared. And my team, I think I had a lot of good value. I felt like had a lot of good.
I think you crushed it. I mean, I haven't
I,
seen the other teams, but I think you crushed it.
yeah, the only thing I didn't address was saves. And I'm
It's a
okay.
15-team 300 draft. There's gonna be a
Right.
category or a spot you're gonna be weak. It's just what it is.
Yeah. And I feel like outfield, I had generic brands. I didn't have name brands, but otherwise, I felt like I had a nice spread, a lot of good value. And so what just ended up happening, I just wrapped up my slow draft this week, and I was uncomfortable from the get go, and I was getting sniped. I don't know how many times I got in the first 10 rounds. I think I got sniped six
Ooh,
times.
that's pretty rough because usually you get sniped after because the first couple rounds are a lot more. I don't have to worry about
Yeah,
this. That's interesting.
yeah. I was just like, "What? Why'd you just take another third baseman? Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah. You're that
Is
high
this
up.
a
You're like, okay, this guy doesn't need the X, Y, and Z, but yeah, yeah,
is this a three kicker league? Why?
yeah.
What?
Right. Shout out Rocco.
So
Yeah,
right. So I was just like, I I had to be able to pivot, like you're talking about, and get uncomfortable with, okay, well, I normally would be taking these kind of few
Mm-hmm.
names because again, I was like the middle third for that one. And I'm gonna, and so I ended up taking Ellie De La Cruz in the first round. I'm like, okay, well, I'm okay with that. Stolen bases are usually my blind spot.
Yeah.
I have a really big check in that regard. And now I can, and so then and then I go with a Corbin Burns. I think I went, because anyway. So as I turned into the skid a few different times where in terms of I got sniped and I said, okay, what would be the next best available versus what would be just the smart play and where is there a tier? And I was like, oh, there's one guy remaining in a huge tier drop off.
Yeah.
It would be smart to do. Okay, like the slow draft allowed me to think kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
mock draft did, and so I'm like the progression I'm in. And now we've come into March and I got 2 drafts left live. One's another quick 1 minute snake draft, 12 teams. So I think I'm ready for that. And then the other one it's a 14 team auction. So with auctions, I'm just going to get my values and then I'm just going to go off
Yeah,
the values.
auctions are
And
fun
that one's
because
more straightforward.
it's about your guys. Get your
Yeah.
guys. Obviously, don't go crazy. $70
No,
on
go
depth is what
crazy.
I'm just looking at would be nuts. But like things like that, yeah, just get your guys. Um, I think you nailed it. And I think as you were talking about it, what would be work best for me is to literally have the tiers in front of me. Like if I have the tiers in front of me by position, outfield is just like very general, but like if I just had the second base, third base, shortstop tiers in front of me, then I could like quickly be like, okay, here's mine, here's what's on the board still, here's what's off. Tracking less like looking for deep stuff versus like, okay, these guys are being taken and cross them out as they come and be like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I need to be aware shortstop's kind of getting low on a tier. It's a major cliff here. Like, okay, don't have to draft them. There's still 2 left. If I get sniped, that's fine. I can wait. Tiers also over here at third. Like, be aware of the tiers, see the cliffs. I just maybe visualizing the cliffs better would have been better for me versus like because that's what I'm like. I need more pitchers, or this, Y, and Z, or oh my gosh, this is over here, and I'm like ignoring this over there. And if I could see them laid out in front of me, it would probably help me more than I have in the past and just winging it. And what I also recommend to people is really, and we say this every year, but really know what league you're in. Who is drafting with you? Like there's a couple times. The first one was first year we did Worf. Obviously, they're all really smart people. Um, and I got some sleepers, and I got these young kids calling up. We're drafting in our home league, and someone's like, "Man, I really wanted X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Dude, you half the people in this league don't even know who this person is." Kind of things like that. And we're
Right.
in our Wolf League, and those guys are going around 13. And I'm like, son of a. I'm like, oh no, like we're already here. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, like so knowing who you are because a lot of those guys were not afraid to take those risks. Like our home league would have never in like round 14 done these things, and they're like, I'm going for the upside. F this, and they would like pull like. And again, I wouldn't have known that first year going into it, but watching them
Right.
draft, I was like, okay, when you get up to this level, these guys are just willing to like, it's their guy. And it was really like, it felt like it was around 10, 11, 12. After 12, it was like, rip the veil off. It's your guy, don't matter anymore. It is like, the example that you give is Jeter Downs was the first one I saw. I was like, boom, there we go, ripped it off. And I was like, round 13 we're going here already. Like I was just like, okay, like it's your guy, like get it. And it's a miss, but you're gonna ride or die with your guys. And so that was like knowing who you're drafting because it can vary. Your home league, you always bake in your local teams and knowing who likes who, get a little bump, but like knowing just like who you're drafting with. Like obviously the rules, but like who you're drafting with is more important than I think the rules even because they dictate how this will go more than anything. And that was eye opening for me just drafting on with randoms online in leagues or home leagues or writers or other like work league, like where my work league is like people across the country and there's no like it's not a home league, but it's not a random league, but it's not a pro league. It's like 4 different styles, I was just like really
Oh yeah.
thrown off how varied they can be.
And I'm almost like I was trying to think. I would say a random league drafts with their eyes. It's
Yep.
name brands.
Yep.
It's who I'm familiar with, who I recognize.
Oh
You
man,
know,
yep. Hell yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then with like the more reputable leagues, like Worth, these guys are in the industry. It's their side hustle. Like they are drafting with their head. They 9 times out of 10 they have a spreadsheet off to the
Mhm.
side or sometime
They've drafted
projection.
14 times already.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
have a website that's tracking, and they're just like, oh man, I took a guy who I think is going to hit 259 average, and it's the average league. So I really got to get a guy that's going to bolster it
Yeah.
with like a 280 on the. I'm just like,
They're live keeping track of like, okay, I'm deficient in here. I need to get something over here. Yeah.
and I think the biggest thing is they have, and it's smart. They have goals in terms of my team needs to total X amount of runs, ribbies, home runs, stolen base, like count those counting stats. I really need to get to a certain amount, ideally, and I need to balance that with also my pitchers being strikeouts and wins, and the ratios will come. But like, it's a smart way to do it because those are season long. It's roto, and whereas like your home team, you're like, you're drafting with your heart. Like, who do you like the most, and who you're willing to take a shot on, and I like the mix. I like having a little one of each league. I love the snake draft, or excuse me, I love the auction league. Snake draft's always fun. It's traditional, is what people are used to, but like the auction league is just,
I
or
think
AKA salary cap league is
yeah.
just, hey, get your guys and enjoy it and
I
have
think if
fun.
I
And
did too many auctions though, I feel like I get hit by a car. Because they could be like they could be draining. They're so much fun, but they would be they're draining if I do a ton of them. Yeah.
you have to be mentally in for
Yeah.
that 3 hours or
Yep.
whatever on every single pick, every single minute. It takes your entire focus, and it is a mental marathon. And if you're willing and able, there's a lot of cool strategies within that salary cap auction type style leagues. You go stars and scrubs, you go just middle of the pack, and like do a bunch of tier two across the board. And I mean, there's a lot of different ways to scheme it, run it. And it all depends on probably how many guys are in your league and whatnot. But that that to me is like the most fun. And
I used to you talk about getting hit by a car is we used to do like 5 hour live drafts.
yeah,
Beers and hot dogs and live draft this up.
Slurpees, lots of Slurpees.
Slurpees. I remember that. Yeah, we that those were heck of a days. I don't know if I could even. I don't know if I could do that. But one time, Dad, I was putting together a shelf during our first auction ever, and I was bidding with you at Bryce Harper upstairs. I was putting together a shelf upstairs, and the computer's on the couch next to me, and we're bidding for Bryce Harper. That's why I always go to Bryce Harper with an auction draft because it's burned in my brain. You beat me for Bryce Harper, but it's burned into my brain because I wasn't paying. I mean, I don't think I would if I wasn't building a shelf. I still don't think I would have outbid you, but I definitely wasn't paying as like I was like 70% paying attention to those first couple of picks because I was finishing up the shelf. But like I was just like I saw Bryce Harper, I was like, oh my god, and then I was like, we're doing
Yep,
this. But
yep,
yeah, like yeah, you got to put your focus on those auction drafts, but they are definitely the most fun. I think you get a good group of players. Live drafts are the way to go. Like you get that. Like that's the way to go. But like
yeah,
that's the hardest. But with most things in today and dads and it's hard to do that. Auction is the most fun. I feel like you're right. It is the most fun. I've seen people just like wing it and be like, look, I'm gonna spend all my money in the first 5 picks, auto draft the rest of it. If you want to do that and go home, log off. Let's do it. But
right,
I did see a buddy in a football league this year did that, spent tons of money, and then left for an hour and came back and like, all right, who's my dollar guys? I
yeah,
was like, hey, they did not do well. But, I was just like, oh, that's that was more injury related than anything. But still, I was just like, they got dead last. But I thought I was like, hey, it's one way to do an auction draft. So
yeah.
knowing who you're drafting with, yeah, huge, yeah,
It's is I think it's unique to baseball too, because I think I did a random Yahoo salary cap auction draft football league,
Yeah,
not this year, but
Marvel stuff.
last year. But there's not as many positions that you draft in general, period. And so like it kind of constraints on how much flexibility and how much like
There's also depth, and by depth I mean it's like
variability.
your bench. I feel like in baseball, your bench, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is like it's not line or depth, but it definitely carries more weight than a football bench. Play
Hmm.
third running back on the bench, like come on, you know what I mean? Like, but it's like in baseball, there's every week. Like I got these guys are probably going to play a number of games for me. Like
Yeah,
everyone on my bench, barring out all injuries. Let's say no one on my team gets hurt. Even bench guys are going to play 30 games for me, 35 games,
right.
and so it's real games that they're going to play just from sheer off days, nicks, bumps and bruises here and there. So like, yeah, you got to put in the hours in baseball. So so it makes it fun, but makes it hard for people.
Yeah, it's quite a grind. I mean, it's a long season, and especially with just there's so much variables. There's so many different types of leagues and different rules, and I mean, like ba- baseball just has a lot more numbers to it. You can have so many different categories in your home league. I mean, it's just it's a lot. It's a complicated uh, fantasy game out of a complicated game in general, and it's you kind of can make it whatever you want to be, as simple or as
That's why it's
complicated
fun.
as you want, and
Yeah, that's why it's
yeah.
fun. So yeah, I guess sum up like, uh, don't be afraid to adapt. Got to adapt. Um, know your players. Know who you're playing against.
Hmm.
Um, what was it? What was the other one? Um, oh, you just said it.
Don't build IKEA furniture
Don't
during
build
an
IKEA while you're trying to build for Bryce
auction.
Harper.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, like you just said it. You just said it. My dad brain's it's going. But yeah, those are the listen back to it, I guess. Um, yeah, those are the advice that we've learned over 20 years of playing fantasy baseball specifically. Um, made some very dumb moves in the past, so don't just listen and don't make the same dumb moves. like, I
yeah.
guess I guess that's it. Yeah,
Have fun, draft your dudes, and just enjoy the ride.
yeah. Make trade. Come
Oh.
on, get spicy in there too for crying out loud. Some people make some moves. Mix it up.
uh, I feel like that's the part of me where I feel old. I'm like, man, I've been there, done that. I don't need to go out of my way to make a trade. Let the trade come to me.
The
I'm
trade.
just
There's a
like
time. There's a time and place. Couldn't get enough of it. Couldn't get enough of it. We
chasing them trades.
Yeah, JT. There was a time and place. Me and you were averaging almost two a week. Like,
Yeah,
and
talk
again,
about
we talked about
value.
this on the podcast. Not even with each other. It was like we were pulling in like two a week to like everybody else in the league. We were getting that cracking. Like, yeah. But
Yeah,
those leagues that are live, man, there's something about waking up in the morning and seeing a trade proposal, though. You know what I mean? Like, there is
yeah.
something, like, or a trade you've been working on, or like accepting a trade. It just felt good. You know what I mean? Like get spicy, get in there. Like, you got to burn it to earn it. You know?
That's it's the only thing I've been enjoyable where I get close to that salesman mentality. I'm like, what do you need? What do I have to offer for your needs, and what can I get in return?
You
Let's
get.
win-win-win
I
situation.
don't know, like, and that's why, like, if some people working remote, working in place. I loved the grind, not of grinding somebody down, but of like working a trade. Like, okay, I want X, you want X. How do we figure out the other variables to get these two lined up? I've spent weeks trying to get a player and finally get that player. Like, just that feeling of like hard work pays off. You know what I mean? It just
Yeah,
it's yeah. I just back room, like, working with my boss, be like, hey, I want Robinson Cano. What do we gotta do to get Robinson Cano?
everybody has a price. Let's make this
Everybody has a
happen.
price, and he raked me over the coals. I did not win that trade. That was prime Cano Yankees. I did not win
Oh,
that trade. I've said it before on the
but yeah,
podcast. That is the trade where I was like, You never know. You never know. But if I had just kept it, I
Yeah.
probably would win the league. But I didn't. I made a trade for the better player. The guys I traded were collectively much better. I lost that trade. Got the better.
But you
Everyone would look at it and
had
be like, "Oh, the guy
fun
was much better."
doing it.
No, but it's still worth it. We'd do it all again. The grind of chasing that trade. That trade was 16 years ago, and I still remember that trade. I remember the words when we agreed on the players. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So these things don't leave you, man. They don't leave you. That's it for today. Who you got a dad bod?
No, everyone's in the best shape of their life in
I know.
spring training.
Best shape of the life. I guess you can
Yeah.
be Garrett Cole, R.I.P. Sorry, buddy. I guess getting that dad shape.
Yeah. When we don't have a dad bod, we need to just go to like the best facial hair of the week or something.
Shout out. I referenced him today. Dad bod, Brendan Ryan. Facial hair included as well.
Oh, Prime, like when they were doing the Mariners, like
Fielding Bible Award, Brendan Ryan.
Oh yeah,
2012.
remember? Was it like 15, 20 years ago? They brought back like the Mariners like haircut night, so they had the Buhner Buzz, but then they also had the Brendan Ryan. They had a Kyle Seager, or I guess Buhner's bald. Seager was the Buzz. They had like 6 of them. That was fun. That'd be cool to do
with all the facial hair.
I feel like maybe that's what baseball's missing a little bit. Having like like once a year, or just have like a facial hair competition night where you get like the top 6 people that walk in the stadium, and then you bring them out on the field, and based on the amount of cheers from the crowd, like the facial hair per person. I mean, just like it's fun. It's interactive, and kind of gets the crowd involved in between innings.
Hey, at least we got the Yankees got rid of their facial hair, because seeing him go to play for the Yankees was that hurt.
Yeah,
just shaving off
that was
sweet facial hair.
That was his power source. That was his mojo.
He didn't have much of it, so but you could still pick it, that's for sure.
Yeah, that was his mojo.
That was a superpower.
Oh, good stuff.
Brandon Ryan baseball, and the third link is Tyler O'Neill biceps. Like what are we doing?
Oh,
did click on it though. He is jacked.
They gotcha. The algorithm gotcha.
He is jacked. That is for sure. Correct you are, Google. Correct you are.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, tweet us, Fantasy Dad Pods, or leave a comment. We had a commenter on our two episodes ago said, "Hey, I'm listening to you on YouTube, but it's like it's still kind of, even though it's podcast, it's still like you have to have your screen on." I'm assuming is what they were getting at. Like,
okay.
And they're like, "Where can I just listen to where I can have like my phone off, but I still listen?" So commented back, anywhere you find your podcast, wherever, Spotify, Apple, all the good stuff. So that was a good question. So that was a good interaction. So listen to us wherever you find your podcast, download. Let us know about any dark horse relief pitchers that you're super in on, but any strategies, anything, any experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, of past drafts, let us know. We'll imbibe and indulge and reminisce.
There's always the adage of you've never there's nothing worse than listening to someone else's fantasy team. That's not true here. We will listen to your fantasy team all day. Tell us about a bad pick, great pick, bad beat you had. Trust us. We will
trade. Trade rip off either way. Yeah.
I actually love it. I love hearing these bad beats, because some of them you guys are historic. Let's put it that way. Some of them are pretty epic.
Yeah, gut wrenching. So cool. All right. Well, as always, we thank you for joining us. We appreciate you listening. Take care, be well, and until next time, see ya.
See ya.